This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
Welcome to the Fatigue Fixer podcast. Have you ever wondered why you and most of the women you know seem tired so much of the time? Well, this is the podcast where we explore why. I'm here to help you better understand how your body works, whether we're talking about heavy, painful periods, why you have to pee all the time, or what the heck is happening to your body through perimenopause. And I'm not afraid to shed light on conversations that I feel we need to be having out in the open. Like, why are so many women struggling with irritability and anger, drinking more alcohol, and injecting our faces with Botox and fillers in an attempt to stay young? I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Vadeboncoeur. I'm a naturopathic doctor, mom, fatigue fixer, and loud and outspoken woman who's fascinated by the state of modern women's health and well-being. I know that you, yes, you, are incredible, and I want you to have the energy you need to share your unique gifts with the world because we are in desperate need of more female leadership. So join me for conversations that will help you feel less alone, more informed about all the things that might be draining your energy, and inspired to fix your fatigue and wake up every morning feeling rested and excited for the day ahead. I can't wait to share today's episode with you, so let's get into it. Today, I want to have one of the conversations that I love having most in my office because women will often walk out like, what the hell happened? I literally had a patient recently tell me that I changed her life within a few minutes of us talking about PMS and anger. So I want to have that conversation here with you today. Now, maybe you feel like you're not someone who gets angry easily. So let me help you get in the mood with this little nugget. According to the World Economic Forum, at current pace of change, it will take 217 years to close the wage gap. If that didn't do it for you, how about this one? Girls do 30% more unpaid work than their brothers. And by adolescence, it's 50% more. I'm sharing these because too often women say to me that they are angry, quote, for no reason. And I know that can feel true. I just don't believe that we're angry for no reason. We're angry for all kinds of reasons that are perfectly justified and reasonable reasons to get pissed off. And as uncomfortable as that anger is, it's there to help guide us. Problem is, very few of us know how to express and manage anger in a healthy way. So we try to suppress it. This is the one where you're a raging bitch, and my goal today is to help you understand, befriend, and use your anger. Because trying to ignore and suppress your anger is costing you not just emotionally, it's bad for your physical health. And while you're probably trying to protect your relationships by controlling your anger, you're actually creating more distance between you and the people you love. So let's unpack anger and how it shows up for so many of us, especially when we're PMSing. According to Brené Brown, anger is an emotion that we feel when something gets in the way of a desired outcome, aka something we want, or when we believe there's a violation of the way things should be. When we feel anger, we believe that someone or something is to blame for an unfair or unjust situation, and that something can be done to resolve the problem. That last part, something can be done, is really important because what you need to know about anger is that it is an action emotion. It makes us want to do something when we feel it. And it's not just an emotion, it activates our nervous system, which takes a toll on our mental and physical health. So why is anger showing up? Well, anger shows up and is activated when our values are not in agreement with the situation we experience. So when you feel anger, you are being shown what you value. So for example, maybe you're in the car stuck in traffic and someone cuts you off to get ahead. and you get real pissed off about that, that is just showing you that you maybe value fairness and respect. Anger also shows up when we perceive something to be unjust or unfair. But with the women I work with, there are two key reasons why anger shows up. The first one is that a boundary has been crossed. Maybe it looks something like this. You ask your mom very nicely to please ask before she comes over to your house. But here she is, unannounced on your doorstep again. You have set a boundary. Your mama did not listen to the boundary. She crossed it, and now you're pissed off. Or maybe you have a need that is not being met. So I know one of the things that I will get angry about is towards the end of golf season. So I live with an avid golfer, and where we live, golf season starts, let's say, April and ends in October. And during all of those months, my partner golfs twice a week. And if you have a golfer in your life, you know how freaking long golf games are. So by the end of September or October, I often start to get a bit annoyed when said partner goes to golf, because one of my needs, which is to have an equal partner and probably to have some relief from solo parenting every Saturday for however many months that is, when I get angry, it's just because I have a need that's not being met. It's there to show me something I need isn't here. It's so easy for us when we get angry, it's so easy for us to assume that there's something wrong with me, right? Something's wrong with me. Why am I getting so angry? Instead of us saying, I wonder what boundary just got crossed, or I wonder what need isn't being met, because that is two of the key reasons why anger is showing up. Instead of asking, is something wrong with me? Why am I so angry? Why am I a raging bitch? It's just showing you that something is wrong with the situation. Something in the environment does not work for you. And so a great question to ask when you start to feel yourself getting angry is, what do I need right now? Because that's part of what anger is trying to show you. Again, there's a need that you have that isn't being met. Anger also sometimes shows up as a cover for something else. A lot of times anger is there because it's actually trying to cover up fear or shame. And part of that is that anger, even though it's hard to be angry, anger is often more socially acceptable, and it feels safer to be angry than it does to be scared, or that it does to admit that you're embarrassed or that you feel ashamed. And sadly, most of us have very poor emotional literacy. So literally when we ask people to name emotions, on average, they can only name 3. Happy, sad, and mad. Now, obviously, we have many, many more emotions, but if we don't connect, if we don't really know what shame feels like or embarrassment feels like, we might just label that as anger. Or if shame feels so uncomfortable, we might actually express anger as a way to keep people away, because anger does a really good job at that, right? It keeps people at a safe distance, and that can feel safer than admitting, I feel ashamed, which shame means that you feel like something is wrong with you. So often it feels easier to say, I'm angry, than I feel like something is wrong with me. And then another big time that anger shows up for so many of us is during our PMS. So a lot of women experience anger and even rage in the days that lead up to our period. So what is the deal with PMS? What is happening when we get PMSy and moody? Basically, what's happening is in the days or the week before your period starts, you're going to have a massive and rapid drop of both your hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And some women's brains are extremely sensitive to that drop or that change in hormones. And that's because hormones have a huge influence on our brain and on our mood. So when we look at estrogen helps to increase levels of serotonin. Most of us have heard of serotonin. It's one of our feel-good brain chemicals. And progesterone increases GABA. GABA is like our natural anti-anxiety hormone. It's very calming. It helps to keep our brain chill and relaxed. So you can imagine when both estrogen and progesterone drop really quickly right before your period, you're probably going to feel less happy and you're going to feel less chill and relaxed. And that's often where we start to see anger start to show up. Now, I want to be very clear that PMS is not caused by having too much or too little of any specific hormones. It's also not caused by estrogen dominance, which actually isn't a real thing, but is a term that gets thrown around in the wellness space to blame everything from mood changes to weight gain. It's not the amount of hormone, it is the drop. It is the change of hormone that we suspect is causing the symptoms. It's not how much hormone you have, which is why hormone testing is absolutely useless when it comes to PMS. And that is because we've done studies where we will test hundreds of women with PMS and we'll test their hormones, and they have all kinds of different levels of hormones. There's no pattern. So you don't need hormone testing to confirm whether or not you have PMS. We can just do that by asking questions and seeing what your symptoms are. And getting your hormone levels tested is also not going to be helpful to help us treat your PMS because, again, it's not about the level of hormones. It's about how your brain reacts and responds to that change. I'm also want to take a moment just to note that if you have severe PMS symptoms, and we'll talk about PMDD in a few minutes, but if you have severe PMS symptoms, especially mood changes, and if you also had postpartum anxiety or depression, you are going to be at higher risk for mood changes when you go through perimenopause, because part of what's happening in perimenopause is these huge drops and fluctuations in hormones that don't just happen once a month, they can happen multiple times a month. So just that's something should be really important, or really, it's important to be aware of that. If you have really bad PMS, you need to just pay extra attention when you start to go through perimenopause. So how do we diagnose PMS? If we're not using testing, because testing is not useless, we do it based on your symptoms. So the first thing that's important to know about PMS is that in order to have PMS, you have to ovulate, which means if you're on the pill and you have mood changes, that is not PMS because you're not ovulating on the pill. But if you have an IUD, you are still ovulating, so you can definitely still have PMS if you have an IUD. Even if you're not bleeding, you can still have PMS. The timing is super important when it comes to PMS. So normally your symptoms will be worse before your period, and you should get significant relief either during your period, like once you start bleeding, or in the days after your period starts. So symptoms can be mental, emotional. That's what we're focused on today, right? We can have major mood swings, anxiety, depression. Women say, I'm crying for no reason. I'm losing my shit. I'm yelling at everybody. I'm super impatient. But there can also be physical symptoms like breast tenderness, cravings, appetite changes, and water retention. One of the things that's really important to know, especially if you have a diagnosis of anxiety or disorder or depression, like if you already have a mood disorder, you will often see that those symptoms get worse during your PMS window. But PMS is different because PMS will get significantly better once you start bleeding. Whereas if your mood is always a bit off and it just gets worse during PMS, that's not the same thing. That's actually but that's a mood disorder that's worsened by hormones. It's not a classic PMS. So we know that about 20 to 50% of women of reproductive age have PMS, and about 5% have a severe form of PMS, which is called premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is also known as PMDD. So PMDD is where you have symptoms that occur regularly, but only during the second half of your menstrual cycle. So again, if we're looking at a PMS or a PMDD, you should not have symptoms in that first half of your cycle. They really only are going to show up in the second half. And the symptoms will end with the start of your period or shortly after. So there really is a very specific timing to PMS and PMDD. When we're dealing with PMDD, the symptoms are a really markedly depressed mood. You can have quite severe symptoms of depression. You can have anxiety, irritability, and major mood swings. Some women will have suicidal thoughts, and there'll be a significant reduction in your interest in your daily activities. So it becomes really difficult to do the basic activities that you would do in your normal day. So the way that we tell apart PMS from PMDD is that PMDD symptoms are severe enough that they start to interfere with your routine daily activities and your overall functioning. So most of us who experience PMS, it's uncomfortable and it can be unpleasant, but most of us are able to still go to work and parent and show up and do the things we need to do. When we're dealing with PMDD, the symptoms are so severe that those things become really difficult. And that's how we know that we're veering more from a PMS into a PMDD. And women who have a history of any kind of trauma are at higher risk for PMDD. So that's really important to know if you are experiencing PMS symptoms and have a history of trauma. PMDD is super important for us to talk about and to screen for in our medical system because women who have PMDD have a higher risk of suicide. So it is really important that if you are having extreme symptoms, that you talk to your doctor about it. We have this tendency to normalize PMS and that to think it's this normal thing. Your PMS symptoms should absolutely not interfere in your day-to-day activities. So if they are, just keep telling your doctor until you start getting treatment options. And we have treatment options, birth control pill, antidepressants, therapy. All of these things can be very helpful to manage the symptoms of PMDD. Please don't suffer unnecessarily. It's really important that you get help. If you're dealing with severe mood changes, if your anger is showing up and making you suicidal or making it really hard for you to function, you need to seek out treatment. If your mood changes are uncomfortable, you're PMSing, but it's not causing you any significant mental health distress, I actually want to encourage you to let that anger be felt because it is here to help you. And I know that's maybe a controversial thing to say, and women don't like hearing that, but hear me out. The anger is here to help you. Too often, when we're in the first part of our cycle, which is when estrogen levels are high, again, estrogen boosts serotonin, we're usually pretty happy, we're usually pretty positive. Our good mood often allows us to more easily let things go, to not say anything when we're feeling upset, and basically to suck it up and carry on. So there might be things in your life that bother you or that are annoying or irritating that happen in that first half of your cycle, but it's a lot easier for you to deal and manage with those things because of what's happening with your hormones. But when those hormones start to drop in that week or so before your period, you're going to lose your rose-colored glasses. So that little thing that a week or two ago was kind of annoying, now it's making you furious because the veil has dropped and it is a lot harder for you to pretend you're not angry. And again, that anger is there to help you by shining a bright, very uncomfortable spotlight on what is not working. Maybe it's your boss that keeps ignoring your boundaries that you've tried to set about not working after 5 p.m., or maybe your partner keeps coming home 2 hours later than they said they would be home after they go to golf or hockey, and now it's too late for you to go for that walk that you really need. PMS is not you being crazy, and it's not you being a nagging bitch. It's anger coming to your rescue to show you what's not working. And it does this for you every single month. And if you start to pay attention, you will probably start to notice that there are patterns and that there are things that keep happening month after month that are triggering your anger. I would invite you that when you feel angry to pay attention to what's making you angry and to make a note so that you can start to see if there are patterns or themes of things that keep coming up. And here's the important part. It's so tempting when you're PMSing to scream and yell and pick a fight because you are so annoyed, and it's hard to keep that in. But you are much more likely to have a productive, useful, helpful conversation if you wait a week or two. Because in a week or two, you're going to be back in high estrogen land with your rose-colored glasses on, and you're probably going to feel a lot less emotional. Not that there's anything wrong with feeling emotional, but if you want to have a conversation, it can help if you're not super emotional. And you're going to feel more confident. So you're going to be more able to express what it is you need, what your boundaries are, what is not working. So there is usually so much helpful and important information for you behind your anger. I really want us to move away from looking at anger as a sign that something is wrong with me and starting to realize that anger is just here to show me something is wrong out here. Something is wrong in the environment, in the conditions, in the setting that doesn't work for me. And anger is just here to show me that. Why do we struggle so much with expressing anger? I think part of it is that most of us don't have a lot of good models, especially a lot of good female models for what healthy anger looks like. And most of us have learned and been rewarded for being nice and being accommodating and keeping the peace. And so when we get angry, when we feel that level of rage, it often shatters this precious image that we've learned of what a good woman looks like. So we don't want to be the one who's enraged and angry all the time. We want to be the nice, helpful, peaceful, good girl. I know the hardest thing for me, and this is something I hear from women all the time, is that when I get mad, when we get mad and we yell at our kids, we feel terrible because it's not their fault. And we don't want them to grow up having a mom who yells at them all the time. So I know this is a big pain point, and this is often why women seek out help for their PMS, because they feel like their kids are paying the price, and that feels deeply uncomfortable. So I hear you and I get that. And I want you to consider that instead of assuming that being angry and PMSy means you're bad mom, what if your anger is just showing you that you're a tired mom? You are an under-supported mom. You are an overwhelmed mom. You are an overscheduled and overly busy and overly rushed mom. Maybe you also need a snack, or you're emotionally drained and burnt out. Most of us are doing everything we can to be good moms and to do what we can for our kids. So I really want you to remove some of that guilt. When you get angry, it's not because you are a bad mom or a bad person. Again, it's just showing you that one of your needs is not being met. And often there are many of our needs that are not being met. Then there are all the mental gymnastics that most of us do trying to not get mad at our partners, because we don't know how they're going to react, or we know how they're going to react and it's not going to be pretty. So we want to avoid upsetting or getting them uncomfortable. And in the end, all that happens is that we pay the price. We don't bring our anger. We don't say how we're really feeling. And that takes a massive toll on our relationships. When I learned this stat that I'm about to share with you, I was floored, but then also not that surprised, which is this: 69% of divorces are initiated by women. We are not telling people what we need. We are not expressing our needs. We are not expressing our anger. And we are often letting our relationships get to the point where they are unsalvageable. And then we file for divorce because we're like, I can't do it. So could we avoid some of this by learning to express anger in the moment instead of saying nothing, which actually just creates more distance between you and your partner until sometimes there's literally no relationship left to save. We know that we are paying a price when we don't express anger, but who else is benefiting when we don't express our anger? Well, I would argue pretty much everybody else except us benefits when we don't express our anger. But I think the people who benefit the most are the people who benefit from things staying the way they are. People who are really comfortable with the status quo. Maybe that's the partner who doesn't have to pick up the slack because instead of asking them to empty the dishwasher for the 432nd time, you just start rage cleaning your kitchen around them instead of asking them, can you please empty the dishwasher? When it comes to our kids, I certainly do not encourage or endorse yelling at our children. But I also know or think, I'm not a parenting expert, but I am a parent. I don't think it's good for our kids to have moms who are secretly enraged, who are resentful and who are burnt out because we are too afraid to tell people what we need. And when it comes to our relationships, anger is actually an important thing that is, again, showing you what's not working. One of the things I heard recently that I can't get out of my mind is the importance of stressing your relationships. And I know that sounds like a bad thing, but stressing your relationship really just means that you're bringing the hard parts to your partner. When you are feeling like something isn't working, when you are upset, when you are angry, and you bring that to your partner, you are stressing the relationship by showing them and telling them honestly what is going on. If you are in a healthy relationship with a partner who cares, you're giving them an opportunity to respond and to change based on whatever is going on. When we bring the hard stuff to our relationship and our partner responds and helps us repair or deal with that thing, we actually are making our relationship stronger. When we don't, when we keep the anger in, when we don't say what is on our mind, when we don't say what we're upset about, we actually often create more distance. Because if you don't think your partner can handle your anger and you keep it to yourself, you're actually just distancing yourself from your partner. And again, sometimes if we do that for long enough, we get to the point where there actually is no relationship left. The other thing that I can't help but think about is how different things would look like if women actually used anger to affect change. Because again, anger is an emotion of action. When you feel angry, part of what anger helps you do is to do something to change the conditions. When women perceive something to be unfair, if we started to look around and realized, wait a minute, why is it going to take 217 years to close the wage gap? That's bullshit. Wait, why are we teaching our girls to do more unpaid work than boys? Why are grown women doing 70% of the world's unpaid work? Like, if we actually let ourselves get angry and we took action on that, things would look very different. I don't think that it is by accident that women have not been taught to express anger. Because if we did express anger and we took action on it, a lot of things would change and a lot of people would not like those changes. A lot of people who are benefiting right now from the status quo would be deeply unhappy. It actually suits a lot of people that women don't express anger, that we don't allow it to show up, that we don't do anything with it other than try to shove it right back down from where it came from. And part of that is that some of us have never been allowed to be angry. When we see a white man who's angry, typically what people will see is, wow, he's really passionate, or he's patriotic, or he must be justified. There must be a valid reason why he's angry. If a black man gets angry, we have a different take on that. That's scary, or that might be more of a criminal thing that he's trying to do. If a Black woman gets angry, she's seen as a threat. And how many times have we seen the trope of the angry Black woman? If you're a white woman who's mad or angry, you get told you've gone mad, or you're crazy, or you're a nag, or you're a bitch. And most of us would prefer to not be called any of those things. So what do we do with our anger? We try to suppress it. We try to hide it. We try to make it go away. And there's a term for that. It's called emotional suppression. And that's basically our tendency to inhibit the expression of emotions. So we basically intentionally avoid distressing feelings because, again, anger doesn't feel good in your body. It doesn't feel nice to feel angry. So when it shows up, we intentionally avoid feeling it by either thinking of other things, distracting ourselves, or trying to hold it in. And that has a cost. And one of the costs is when we look at how that impacts our behaviors. So a lot of times when we're angry and we're trying not to feel angry, we will do something that makes us feel less angry. That might look like pouring ourselves a big glass of wine. It might look like smoking a joint. It might look like buying shit online I don't need. It might look like eating a whole bunch of cookies I'm not really hungry for. So emotional suppression has a direct impact on your behavior and what you're doing. It also has an impact on your physiology. So we know that when people try to suppress their emotions, they have higher levels of reactivity to stress, meaning if a stress comes up, they're going to pump out way more cortisol than someone who actively expresses their emotions. And there's this whole trend right now of worrying about cortisol. Well, if you're worried about cortisol, I would start to pay attention to how often you're suppressing your emotions, because I guarantee that this is a bigger deal than your coffee, which does not raise your cortisol, or cardio, which also does not raise your cortisol long term. We also know that suppressing your emotions increases inflammation, and inflammation is linked to all kinds of different chronic diseases. It suppresses your immune system, and it makes it slower for you to heal wounds. So there's all kinds of literal changes happening in the body when you feel angry and you try to keep it in and you don't express it. And what anger turns into for a lot of women, unexpressed anger turns into rumination. Another word for rumination is overthinking. How many of us are living in our heads, overthinking, thinking everything to death, rehashing everything that happened, looking ahead and worrying and anticipating all these different things that we do? And we could probably avoid so much of it if we just actually expressed our anger when it showed up. When we combined that behavior change, so when we're angry, it changes our behavior, plus the increased stress hormones, plus all the physical changes that are happening, emotional suppression makes us more likely to get sick. And people who have the highest levels of emotional suppression, and the way that we gauge that is we see how much people agree with the following sentence: I'm not afraid to let people know my feelings. The more you disagree with that, so you disagree that you're not afraid to let people know your feelings, so AKA you hide your feelings, the more you disagree, you have a higher risk of dying of cancer and a higher risk of death from all causes. This is not just that you're going to feel uncomfortable and be rage cleaning. You're literally making yourself more likely to get sick and die when you do not express your emotions. And so many of us are self-silencing, which is basically this propensity to engage in compulsive caretaking, pleasing everybody, and an inhibition of our self-expression in relationships in an attempt to achieve intimacy and meet our relational needs. Self-silencing is connected to irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, which affects a whole lot more women than men, chronic fatigue syndrome, and cancer. So next time you feel anger, I really want you to try to catch yourself from going into, I am a bad person, I'm a bad mom, I'm a nagging bitch, I'm a whatever words you use. And I want you to just take a moment and realize that anger is there to show you something that doesn't work. Because suppressing your anger is exhausting. Being resentful in your relationships because you're not saying how you really feel is exhausting. Pasting a smile on your face and saying, I'm fine, when you are seething on the inside is exhausting. Feeling guilty every time you're PMSing is exhausting. And it's not just fatigue, it's that we, again, are literally more likely to get sick and die when we do not express our emotions. If you are ready to learn how to befriend your anger and how to work with your hormones so that you're not PMSing every single month, if you want your relationships to get better because you're not raging at everyone when you're on your period, I want to invite you to come check out Effortless Energy. This is my women's circle for physically exhausted and emotionally drained women with never-ending to-do lists who want to reclaim more time and energy for what truly matters. And here's the kicker, by doing less, because most of us excel at doing more, and that is what got us into this hot mess. So we learn how to do less. This is a monthly membership that gives you access to video lessons that you can watch at your own pace that basically guide you through my speak system, which is all about decoding your body's messages, like anger, to unlock more energy, joy, and confidence. There are lessons on working with your menstrual cycle, managing PMS mood changes, and how to start expressing your emotions in a way that's good for you and your family. You also get a monthly live group call with me and a monthly Q&A call so you feel fully supported. At $47 per month, it is the perfect way to get support in between your one-on-one appointments, or it's a great way to work with me if you live outside Ontario. Just go to fatiguefixer.ca/EE2024 to learn more and to get started right away, or find that link in the show notes. And next time that you notice yourself getting angry, I want you to stop and ask, what boundary is being crossed? Or what need isn't being met? Anger is here to give you the energy to make changes in your life that benefit you. So next time you feel yourself turning into a raging bitch, channel that energy into taking action on something that makes your life less enraging. Thanks for spending your precious time with me today. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much to me if you would take a moment to leave us a rating and review, and share this episode with a friend who needs to hear it. If you're ready to get more insight into what's making you tired, find out which of the 5 most common types of fatigue you're dealing with by taking my fatigue fingerprint quiz at fatiguefixer.ca/quiz. Are you dealing with frazzled fatigue, where your body's exhausted but your brain won't shut up? Or maybe you're more of the drained fatigue type, where no matter how much sleep you get, you struggle to get up in the morning. Just take my fatigue fingerprint quiz and you'll have more insight into which labs to ask your doctor for and what habits and practices are best for fixing your type of fatigue. Find the quiz at fatiguefixer.ca/quiz. Because let's face it, accepting perpetual exhaustion as the norm, that's just not going to fly around here. Last but not least, I want to thank Jen Hudson and Mike Trutler over at Story Studio Network for bringing these conversations to life. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you back here soon. Bye.